Now, George Soros is at Davos this year, and he is talking about a total collapse of society and acting like he and his cohorts had nothing to do with it. He now wants to be our savior. But before we get into that whole report, I thought we would look at the man, George Soros himself, who's talked about 3 years ago having a good crisis and all the rest of it, because different people that work for him and different mouthpieces are calling for basically shutting down and arresting anybody that criticizes the government, and they're pushing this new version of authoritarianism on the public. Now, there's a bit of a mystery here. I know that a decade ago and a year ago and 6 months ago, I was able to go to YouTube or Google, and before that I had a VHS copy of it a listener sent me, we can't find around here, of George Soros on 60 Minutes, December 20th, 1998, talking about how he went around with his guardian, who he'd been given to hide him with, because the guardian was reportedly not Jewish, so that he couldn't be picked up by the Nazis, and then that he would go around to the different Jewish homes, helping catalog their property and land, which the Nazis then took. And in his spin, he says that's okay because they were taking the property. He wasn't, but he was helping them. So that's like saying, if I help knock down your door and then step aside for you to go in and rob somebody, that I'm not involved. And the mystery here is there are hundreds of transcripts of this on news sites, you name it. I have seen the full interview many times of him on 60 Minutes, and it is gone from the BitTorrents, from YouTube, from Google, from every video site. Today on the radio, when I couldn't find it, I put the call out to our millions of listeners to find it. They couldn't. It has been expunged. There's this one audio clip that's only part of the transcript we were able to find on YouTube, audio of the video. So he does not want people seeing this. Now, I find it interesting because Soros, we'll play some of these clips later, is constantly comparing everybody to the Nazis. George Bush, which I actually have to agree with, but it's true, and others. But then gets mad if he gets compared to it. Because he's always funding left-wing organizations that claim they're for freedom, but then when you really bore down into it, he's pushing a lot of different forms of authoritarian oppression, in my view. But looking at the transcript of this, and we'll put it back up before we play the audio clip of what we do have, Croft is saying to him, and you watch lots of people get shipped off to the death camps. Mr. Soros, right? I was 14 years old, and I would say that's when my character was made. In what way? That one should think ahead, one should understand and anticipate events, and when one is threatened, it was a very tremendous threat of evil. I mean, it was a very personal experience of evil. Croft, my understanding is that you went out with the protector of yours who swore that you were his adopted godson. Yes, yes, Soros says. Croft, went out, in fact, and helped in the confiscation of property from Jews. Mr. Soros, yes, that's right, yes. And then he goes on with no feeling of guilt, no. I mean, I've seen this video, and it's gone. And the reason I raise this is in looking for this again today, I find Media Matters, who's told me on the phone when they've called me as reporters before, when they openly work for Obama and others, that they've never gotten money from Soros. And then I go to the federal filing papers online, and there's Soros, $1 million here, money there. I mean, I've had their head people call me, and I'm like, you work for George Soros? And they go, no, we don't. No, we don't. I'm like, yes, you do. And the guy starts laughing at me. So it's super creepy because I'm not defending Glenn Beck here, but look at this. Beck falsely accuses Soros of Nazi collaboration on Kristallnacht anniversary. And then you read into their article, and give me a document cam shot on this if you can. They've got the exact same quotes of the transcript I just read. Went out, in fact, and helped confiscate the confiscation of property from Jews. Yes, that's right. Yes. No feelings of guilt? No. I mean, this is the level of mind control. where the TSA is on video sticking their hands down people's pants and then going, we're not sticking hands down pants. Or their own reports say the radiation's giving people cancer, and they go, our report shows no cancer, and the report shows cancer. This is this weird psychological warfare thing they do where they just engage in all this bizarre behavior. And I mean, I could see that sliver of truth there, that grain of truth that, well, I was 14 and they'd have killed me if I wouldn't have done it. But still, it's technically collaborating with the Nazis. I mean, that is what it is. And listen, if you would have come out after that and done things that were humanitarian, then people could forgive you. But instead, you always claim you're humanitarian when you push the nastiest globalist garbage I've ever seen. I mean, I do believe in second chance for people that are juveniles, because a lot of people, including myself, did bad things. I mean, I stole beer a couple times out of golf cart ice chest. Maybe when a bully started a fight with me and I got him down, I stomped him a little too hard and put him in the hospital. Maybe I should have held back. But that isn't in the same universe as the type of thing Soros has done. So I wanted to just cover some backstory on that for a moment before I get into his latest statements, the latest things he's up to. But here's a clip of him on CNN, a grainy YouTube clip of him on CNN talking about George Bush and similarities to Nazis. And of course, he was getting into the way they use propaganda. How about secret arrest? How about torture? How about planting weapons on groups or lying about Iraq and staging false flags? I mean, George W. Bush and what he did was Nazi. But Soros even kind of waffles on this. Here it is.
Now, when a lot of people hear comparisons between President Bush and Nazis and communists, they're going to say, George Soros, you've gone over the top.
You actually picked up the most incendiary part of the book, and I am very careful to draw a clear distinction between the Nazi regime and our open society, because we are a democracy. But there are some similarities in the propaganda methods which I pointed out.
Okay, now we're going to get here in a moment to the only clip we can find of the audio, not the video of him on 60 Minutes, where he talks about it being this great time of his life. You know, they're surviving during this great time of crisis and the incredible confidence they had, basically running around helping the Nazis. This happened not just in Hungary and Poland, in Germany and other areas, actually. If the Jews didn't pay protection money to the Nazis, they were not allowed to get out of the country. But they were not allowed to pay protection money and go to New York or other places. They had to go to Israel. And it turned out there were a bunch of Zionists, this is a big dirty secret, who actually profited from robbing their fellow Jews and not letting them escape to New York and putting pressure on New York and, well, more importantly, England. New York did allow, the United States did allow some people to come in, but England wouldn't let any of them in. And it was a conspiracy theory in the news post-World War II during the last few years to say that Hitler was exterminating people. So, you know, that's one of the reasons today people then go around and say that Hitler didn't kill any Jews, because that was already being said in the news to anybody that pointed out that Hitler was killing Jews. And Hitler was killing Jews and a lot of other people. And there have been some Jewish professors and others in the U.S. that have written books on this subject. You always have mafias over racial groups or religious groups who will work with outside oppressors to kind of be the minders and the managers of all of this. And it's truly disgusting. Truly disgusting. In fact, again, we have this short little clip. This is all we can find. This is the only audio of the video out there. We read you the transcript of the really damning stuff. But here he is on 60 Minutes.
It was actually probably the happiest year of my life, that year of German occupation. For me, it was a very positive experience. It's a strange thing, you know, because you see incredible suffering around you, and in fact, you're in considerable danger yourself. But you're 14 years old and you don't believe that it can actually touch you. You have a belief in yourself, your belief in your father. It's a very happy-making, exhilarating experience.
And while we're at it, we'll cue up a clip of him at Davos a few years ago calling for, you know, this new world order and China being a big part of that, which of course they are. The Chinese communist leaders fit into the authoritarian model quite nicely. Before I get into why I'm raising George Soros today, it's just that when he talks about collapse and martial law and all this stuff, folks better listen, because he's only going to start making noises about how terrible it is when he thinks it's getting very, very close. And I know Russell Means wants to talk about that. He, coming up in the interview we're going to be doing with him later, I asked him, what do you want to cover first? He said economic collapse, hyperinflation. So we'll be talking to that on that subject coming up. Right now, let's go ahead and go to that clip of George Soros on the New World Order.
What sort of a financial deal should Obama be seeking to strike when he travels to China next month?
No, I think this would be the time, because you really need to bring China into the creation of a new world order, financial world order.
Okay, so my issue with Soros is he's financed all these color revolutions in former Eastern Europe, and they replace kind of the Russian quasi-puppets with Western puppets that are even more oppressive. Not a fan of the Soviet tyranny, been against it my whole life. Not a fan of some of the Islamic oppression. But the point is, the West is bringing in a more scientific form. And George Soros funds anti-gun groups. He's always funding groups demonizing the free speech of libertarians and constitutionalists. He's got his different organizations writing articles about me almost every day, twisting and you know, dissembling things, and then running around and acting like a victim when anybody talks about him. Now, continuing here, going back to the Daily Beast articles while we got on the subject of Soros, he's come out, and we have an article on Infowars.com that breaks it down in more detail, and basically talks about economic collapse, martial law, political crackdowns, and he says this is the most evil, to quote him, time of his life, even more dangerous probably than World War II. And this is coming from a guy who broke the Bank of England. This is coming from a guy who is incredibly ruthless. You know, that's the thing, is that he didn't stop his predatory actions after he was 14, 15 years old, collaborating with the Nazis. Continuing, again, I wanted to show you the old quote of him coming out and saying, I'm having a very good crisis. So he's having a very good crisis a few years ago, but now that the collapse is getting near, and he's saying he doesn't invest people's money anymore because it's too dangerous, and you know this horrible time is coming. The system's been getting ready for collapse ever since they got rid of Glass-Steagall 13 years ago and began the implosion of the world economy. They lit the fuse that's leading to this, and they want total power and control out of it. But George Soros and his media groups for decades have been demonizing anybody that ever dares point out that we're being conquered by finance capital and derivatives fraudsters.